Hello to all my gardeners out there and welcome to my garden. Today I'm going to jump right into my raised bed gardens and show you what I did to create a small homestead, the materials I chose to grow with, and some of the resources I have used to help guide my research. My name is Andi, and I'm in the low desert of Southern California outside of Temecula in Zone 9B. And this is Andi's Botanical Creations and Designs. I'm new at gardening, but I've been doing all sorts of research, reading books, watching lots of YouTube videos, and learning for many years on how to start a garden and hopefully produce vegetables and fruit for years to come. Having a garden where I grow my own vegetables and have citrus trees has been a long time goal of mine. And I'm so excited to start sharing this journey with those of you on YouTube who like gardening videos and would like to support me as I turn this little channel into a larger community and hopefully one day start a business of my own. Part of this channel is also to encourage those of you who might feel a bit overwhelmed at the idea of having a garden, either due to physical limitations, space constraints, or social stigma. Gardening has, over the years, developed a bit of a strange stigma. If we have more than grass and the occasional ornamental bush in our yards, it can be seen as though we are overly interested in the environment, out of touch, or just, quote, over the top. I think gardening and feeding ourselves through plants should be accessible to all people, and be something we encourage others to do around us, and not to vilify one another for doing it. There are so many mental and physical benefits of having a garden. Gardening can give us a retreat and a reprieve from the day-to-day that keeps our minds constantly filled with anxiety and fear. It allows us to be in the moment fully and appreciate nature and the earth in its truest form without having to go for a hike or go camping or find a body of water. All of those are very nice things to do. But sometimes we really could just benefit from having a small safe haven close to home where we can retreat to when things feel a little too hectic. On a physical level, gardening gives us a reason to get outside, and the sun gives us some much needed vitamin D. And in a tech-based world where we spend so much of our time indoors, it brings us closer to nature and allows us to feel connected to the environment. It will bring down our stress and regulate our body's natural hormones so we can stay healthy throughout our lives. It gets us to move around, making movements like lifting heavy bags of soil and pots, squatting, pulling, dragging, and breathing. All actions that help move our muscles and gives us a reason to stretch and get our blood circulating stronger. And of course, we're given an opportunity to grow our own food. It feels very nice to have a place where we can get fresh fruits and vegetables at any point and have less waste and more fulfillment in our day-to-day lives. These are just a few of the reasons why I have decided to start a garden of my own, but also to show the garden community that it is possible to have a garden in a smaller space. I think a lot of people like to show off their multi-acre gardens without realizing that most of us are not able to purchase a home with that kind of capacity. Places like California can be really hard to find property that allows for a larger yard without compromising living in the middle of nowhere or outright buying a farm. I want to create a channel where people of all walks of life can relate to the space I have and see that it is possible to grow our own food. Whether you are someone who plays a lot of video games or just a simple cottage witch, I want everyone to feel like they have accessibility to gardening. So let's get into it. Here in Southern California's low desert, I have a very small yard. It's about 250 square feet, but the space I'm choosing to use for a vegetable and flower garden is much smaller than that. I have plans to add a few other garden beds. I'd like to have a vertical garden bed for strawberries and herbs, and a low ground-based garden bed that allows for the roots to go into my yard soil and grow things like pumpkins, melons, and winter squash in a seasonal pattern. But for now, I have 2 small raised garden beds that are not flush with the yard soil and that only come up to about 17 inches. I think this size is really great for beginners or for people with limited mobility because you wouldn't need to lift very high to get into the garden bed. It is just big enough to allow for an array of great vegetables, herbs, and flowers. And although it looks small at a glance, you can really pack a lot of plants in these little planters. For my soil, I didn't want to use any animal byproducts as compost, and I couldn't find anything like mushroom compost at my local garden center, nor could I find affordable mushroom compost online. So I decided to go with worm castings. I think worm castings are a good alternative to cow or chicken manure because I really wanted to try and be as environmentally conscientious as possible without compromising soil fertility. The worm castings were relatively affordable online, and I was able to order enough to layer between the different sections of the raised garden bed soil. And I'll get into some of the reasonings for layering and why I chose the compost I chose in other videos. But for today, I'm kind of just going over the basic composition of how I assembled my raised garden beds. For my raised bed garden soil, I went with the Kellogg brand, which I really like. I don't prefer the Miracle-Gro. I have found a lot of plastics in Miracle-Gro, and so I prefer Kellogg, which are much larger bags than the Miracle-Gro bags anyways, and so I feel like I get a lot more soil for the amount of money that I'm spending on the bags, rather than if I were to purchase the Miracle-Gro bags. I just find the Miracle-Gro bags to be a little bit misleading. And I purchased them in bags because I don't have an area in my yard where I can have a pickup truck or some kind of a large raised truck that can unload a substantial amount of soil directly into my yard. And again, I'm making these videos to show others how gardening can be accessible. And ordering soil in bulk, in my opinion, is more for people who are not focused on that aspect of gardening, but have much more space and much more yard available to them. And so accessibility may not exactly be important to them. And this channel is specifically to help people who might feel like gardening is not very accessible. If you live in a slightly more urban area and you have garden centers near you, there are delivery services now that can deliver the garden beds right to you. And so the garden beds and the soil directly to you. And I think some of these things are taken for granted if you're not somebody with limited mobility, because if you are somebody that, you kind of have an environment curated for you if you need a walker or if you have a wheelchair, we don't think about how difficult it might be to just go to the store. And so if you do want to have a garden, if you can have someone help you assemble, the maintenance will not be too difficult for you with some of these ideas that I'm trying to give. So just a suggestion for people who might have limited mobility, that these lower raised bed gardens with the gardening soil, the raised bed garden soil, and have that delivered straight to your house, that might not be a bad idea for somebody who is feeling like they can't go to the store. They don't want to go to the store. They don't want to deal with the struggles of going to the store. And they can get that. You could get your socialization in other ways than just, going to a garden center. If you're going to go to a garden center and like look at the plants and browse the plants, and that's like really nice for you, I think that's great. But for like getting the soil and the garden beds and all that stuff, that might be a little much. So I just wanted to just kind of put that out there. You can have things delivered to you, and if you have someone in your life that can help you put it together, that might be really nice. So getting back to my garden, for these two small raised garden beds, I initially thought I would need about 6 bags of soil, but I only ended up needing 4. And then I used a little bit of a 5th bag just to kind of top it off and make sure everything was level, make sure it was really tight and high up into the garden bed, but not overflowing, not all the way to the top, but just enough so that it's up to that last like little divot where the wood kind of protrudes out. That's where I wanted the soil to rest. And so I knew it would be packed really well in there, and that I needed about 4 and like a third of a 5th bag. And these are the big bags. Kellogg only comes in one size bag. It's the 2.5 cubic feet, I think it is. They have the bigger bags. I've never seen a Kellogg brand garden soil have small bags. So it's just the big bags of raised garden bed soil. So, and then the leftover bags of soil, I was actually able to use those, at least one of them. I still have one left over, so it was a lot of soil. So I definitely didn't need 6. I think you could do this with just 4 if you're just going to fill up these 2 garden beds. I used the leftover bag of the 5th bag to pot some potatoes in a soft grow bag.
Potatoes!
And I'll show this in another video. They were really big grow bags. I was actually expecting them to be a little bit like not so wide and like taller, but it's fine, whatever. It's still soil. The plants will grow, the potatoes will grow in them. So I have some potatoes going in a soft grow bag in addition to garlic and ginger. And I did this with the potatoes, garlic, and ginger so that I can avoid digging into my raised garden bed, which is something I'll go into more detail in another video. There is a lot of research that suggests that if you have a raised garden bed with things like tomatoes, cucumbers, peas, beans, zucchini, flowers, herbs, that you want to avoid using dig-based plants. So you want to avoid potatoes, tubers, garlic, ginger, onions, these types of things. You don't want to put those in your raised garden bed because it will disrupt the local roots of those other plants, where the roots are really fine and fibrous, and they need to like stay in their environment unbothered for the most part. I mean, a little bit of bothering and stuff here and there is not going to do anything, but if you're going in there and you're digging out all these potatoes and all of these garlic and ginger roots, these things are going to go wherever they can. They're going to go into all these little nooks and crannies. And so you want to avoid digging into your raised garden bed. So you put those things in pots and they'll grow just fine in pots. And so that's something that I'll go into in a little bit more detail later on. And so that's about it for the actual garden beds themselves. I have a trellis that is like an archway that I'm going to use for the beans and the cucumbers. And I decided to try and grow those specifically from a seed. So with the beans, I know that beans are kind of more of a cooler weather crop, but I really like green beans. I love green beans. And so if I could grow my own green beans all year round, I'm going to try it. I'm not going to let a seed packet tell me what I can and can't grow. So I'm going to grow the green beans with some tomato, peppers, marigolds, dill, sweet alyssum, and lavender and oregano. And on the other garden bed, I'm going to grow the cucumber with my cucurbits. So it's going to have the squash and zucchini, and those are all from seed. And then I have lavender, thyme, dill, and radishes. And I'll get into companion planting a little bit later, how I got my research for companion planting, and what I'm looking forward to for the future seasons for companion planting things like carrots and cold weather squashes and things like that. But those are my 2 raised garden beds for now. That's what I'm growing for now. I got started a little bit later, but like I said, this isn't about doing things perfectly. This is about just doing things so that it's accessible and simple, and it's easy as I can make it, because I think that gardening is already overwhelming as it is. And so if we can just get ourselves to just put stuff in the soil and just start growing, I think that is the most valuable thing that we can do. And then we can work on technique and soil fertility and making sure that everything is like working to 100% capacity. But I think just getting that first step of just getting plants in the ground and in your soil beds is really just, that's like the thing. A lot of this gardening info that I see online, it feels like a lot of fluff to me. There are a few people that I really, really like, and I'll talk about those people later. But a lot of times I see people and I'm just like, that feels gimmicky, that feels thrifty, like I just need something that works, so that's what my channel is kind of supposed to be about. So accessibility and just getting you going and getting you started on gardening, because I think we could all benefit from this. Socially, psychologically, physically, I think we could all benefit from having, even if it's just the smallest garden, even if you're just growing one plant. What's the plant that you love? Do you love peppers? Do you love cucumbers? Do you love tomatoes? Do you love strawberries? Like, what's the thing that you're just like, I just want to eat these all day long, every day? And just plant it. Just get it. Just get it and plant it and just get started. And that's what my channel is about. Just getting that little voice out of the back of your head that's like, oh, it's too hard and it's too complicated. Just, quiet that noise and let's just get into the garden. So my story may not be relatable to everyone, but I'd like to think that in many cases, the idea of not being able to do something you're really passionate about is really universal. And hopefully you can relate to this idea. And maybe you're not ready in your current situation to have a raised garden bed, but don't let go of your dream, because the right time could be waiting for you in the next chapter of your life. And you wouldn't want to say, like, I'm never going to have a garden. And then one day, maybe you can have a garden, but you've told yourself that you can't have one. And so I think that keeping that dream alive, even if it's not in the right space, even if it's not the right time, just maybe one day it will be. And so just keep that dream alive and keep thinking about it. So I hope you enjoyed watching me get my garden beds ready. And if you would like to continue watching my journey unfold, please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in the garden. Thank you so much for watching.